Loaded MLB slate for a Tuesday. What should we be betting on with 15 games to choose from? We got first five wagers coming your way. We got team totals. However you want to break down the slate, it's coming your way on First Pitch. Dan Alexander here, and joining me to break down this lovely Tuesday slate, we got Eric Pauly from the Gold Sheet and 2Rs. 1L, Steve Merril in the house today, gentlemen. And we're excited. Monday was a terrific day for the bettors in the chat, for the bettors here on the show. Seemed like everyone was hitting on all cylinders. We'll recap some of that. But first, let's look forward and take a look, Steve, at the Mariners and the A's. How are you looking to bet this one? This one going a little bit later. 9:40 is the start time. And this one looked like we got Kirby and Spence on the mound, the road favorite for the Mariners, who have been quietly rolling here in at least their last 10 total. Sitting around a 7.5 is what I'm seeing. Steve, how are we looking to bet this one?
Yeah, so yesterday on Monday, only 8 games. So only about half the league, a little over half the league played, a little less than half the league did not play. And these two teams did not play last night on Monday. And that's part of the handicap here for Tuesday. And this is something I've talked about a lot when you and I do the Friday show, Dan, is that I'm always looking to play the better team in game one because I think they stay focused, especially when you have a good team against a bad team. And it's even better when you have a road favorite because you get a discounted price. And I think the road favorite in game one away from home is even more focused in a new city. And then on top of that tonight, we also have an angle that Jeff Michaels and I talked about last summer, and I've been following it very closely ever since, and that's teams returning home off extended road trips. Now, Oakland only played 6 road games at Tampa, at Atlanta. So it was a 1-week trip to the East Coast, but they come back home, day off. And the worst spot for teams coming off a road trip of 6 or more games, and Jeff Michaels pointed this out last year, is a home dog with 1 day's rest. And it's really interesting when you think about it. It makes a lot of sense. Coming back, you got the distractions of being at home. Then you have that day off to regroup, and then you got to go play the next day. And then on top of that, you're the inferior team against a better opponent. This all sets up well for Seattle tonight. We get a very reasonable price, and I have no problem backing the Mariners. They've won 7 of their last 8. The A's, meanwhile, have lost 4 out of 5, 5 out of 7. And even though they stand a respectable 24-37, and that is respectable for Oakland, they're much weaker than that. And I've also looked to fade the A's basically in game ones for several years. They have no home field advantage. They're a lame duck city team right now. And then on top of that, the Mariners won't overlook a divisional rival here in game one. You know, where the Mariners maybe fall in this 3-game series is perhaps tomorrow or on Thursday if they win the first 2, but it's not tonight. I like Seattle in this game, and it's a reasonable price being the road favorite with no home field advantage for Oakland. Lay the $1.55 with the Mariners at 9:40 Eastern.
The Mariners, the road favorite, getting it done right out of the gate, says our man Steve Merril. Hop below in the comments. Let us know what games that you'd love to hear about. Hey, while you're hanging out with us, make sure you hit that like button as well. And if you haven't already, I'm sure you are, but subscribe if you haven't. If you're new to the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. And then you'll never miss when we're going live here. Get you on the right side of some line moves as we move through the summer here. There was Mariners, A's. We'll still talk Reds, Rockies, KC, Cleveland coming up right now with my man EP. Baltimore, Toronto. We'll talk Braves, Red Sox, and then we'll talk about that pitching change and how it affects the Mets and the Nationals. You can hop below in the comments and let us know which games you'd like to hear about as well, and we'll hit on them. But as alluded, EP, KC, Cleveland, I mean, the Lugo train is rolling on in to Cleveland, and it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Lugo to record a win. They don't lose when he's starting on the road. Is it that simple? We just formulaically play it. How are you seeing this game shaking out? And welcome on in, EP.
Yeah, what is going on? So this matchup is something I have a few different ways of looking at. So for starters, Tristan McKenzie going for the Guardians. Now, he has put together a pretty nice season. He's a guy who was dealing with injuries, and he actually opted not to get Tommy John surgery after his injury last year, even though he probably could have. And he's seen his fastball velocity dip absolutely like 4 or 5 miles per hour over the last couple of seasons. But so far this year, he's been very effective. However, when I dig into his advanced metrics, expected batting average, expected ERA, fielding independent pitching, expected fielding independent of pitching, he is a prime regression candidate from a starter. All of those metrics are much more indicative of your actual ability to allow runs versus what he has been allowing so far this year. So I think McKenzie is somebody to target to be a regression candidate. Now, Seth Lugo, of course, has been great, as we've mentioned. Now, he's a kind of interesting case as well because the numbers are fantastic. 9-1 starts, has all these quality starts as well. But it's not like he is this like elite pitcher by advanced metrics. But I do like the Royals on the first 5 money line. But all things considering in this game, I actually do like the over going full game. And there is a hitter for the Royals I like on Dinger Tuesday today and also for bases. That's Vinny Pasquantino, left-handed hitter for Kansas City. He has been absolutely heating up. And he hasn't done that well against McKenzie in his career. McKenzie has good numbers against this Royals lineup, but is really against 9 ABs against Bobby Witt and like 16 against Salvador Perez. So the rest of these younger Royals have not really seen McKenzie. But I think that Vinny Pasquantino is a great look for a home run and total bases. As McKenzie has allowed one of the top home run / fly ball rates in the American League and also in just all starting pitchers of 30-plus innings pitched. So I like Vinny Pasquantino to go yard. Like the Royals take the first 5. I like the over 8 in this one because we know the Guardians, they don't stop hitting. And yes, Luka's going to go deep into this game, but I like a potential matchup here that's going to include a bunch of runs from both sides. Good look for Dinger Tuesday, and I like the Royals' first 5 full game over.
Yeah, and that was the initial look for me in this one as well, is that over, because yes, you look at Lugo, you think of what he's done on the road. However, I feel like quietly when we talk about great home and road splits and what teams have done at home, Guardians 20-7 record at home, averaging just under 8 runs a game at home. I mean, they're at their home ballpark for whatever reason. It has just worked for the Cleveland Guardians. So I like the breakdown there as far as the first 5. Actually, our man Tyler was hopping in the WagerTalk Today channel, and he was talking about potentially playing a first 5 on the Royals, calling his shot with the Guardians for the full game. Speaking of the chat, shout out Lonnie Wagner, Eric D., City by the Bay, Jason Baumgartner, RU Zen over on the YouTube Shorts feed. Everybody tuning in, we appreciate you joining us here, making us a part of your Tuesday. Guys, the other game that is in the description of the YouTube video, so we don't want to disappoint you, is the Braves and the Red Sox. So we'll hit that one right now because this is 2 teams that just desperately need some positivity. For the Braves, more so at the plate, the hitting slump is pronounced for this side. And for the Red Sox, they just can't get a series win to save their life. It's a 2-game set here that's opening up. It's Fried and it's Crawford. I'm wondering for you, EP, I'll throw it back your way, and then we'll get Steve's thoughts. Anything stand out to you on this Braves and Sox matchup?
So what Max Fried's done so far this year, I mean, we've already taken note. He is coming off a poor start, but the Boston Red Sox inability to hit left-handed pitching has been very well documented so far this season. They're really high in strikeout rate, not very high in hard hit balls, expected weighted on base average, so on and so forth. And something that I like to take a look at in matchups like this where you're really not sure exactly how it's going to pan out because you have a guy like Max Fried who is a ground ball pitcher to a T against an offense. And I like to look at if the offense has the ability to lift the baseball and kind of, a situation where great offense beats great pitching where, yeah, you could be a ground ball pitcher, but if the team is good enough at lifting the baseball, then it might actually be a situation to back the bats rather than the clearly better pitcher. But Boston against left-handed pitching is not really putting the ball in the air whatsoever. So I do think that this price on the Braves is fair at 170. And I probably, if I had to, bet this game, I look at just laying it with Atlanta. I know Cutter Crawford's been good, and the Braves are striking out a lot against right-handed pitching. But I'm not sold that Cutter Crawford is like this really like elite pitcher. While we know Max Fried, when he is on, he's as good as it gets, and the Sox lineup can hit lefty. So I would just lean toward the Braves on the money line, but nothing really sticking out too much for me in this one so far.
Yeah, and Steve, in this one, we're seeing this total anywhere from 8. There's a rogue 8.5 out there as well. But as I'm hearing EP talk, and I'm just thinking about what the Braves did last month, I mean, they were in the class of the White Sox and the Reds as far as the runs that they were putting up on the calendar last month. Just over 3 runs per game is what they were looking at in May. Maybe they can get what some of Cincinnati ordered. Now they don't get to play in Colorado, but when Cincinnati, turned the calendar here into June, it was a welcome sight for their bats. Like, why don't we just play the under? Like EP was saying, Boston not great against hitting lefties. That's what you're going to be seeing in Fried. This Atlanta team, they've given me nothing to feel good about at the plate. So why don't we just grab that 8 and go under? What say you?
Yeah, month of May, the Reds and White Sox, the only two teams that were worse scoring than the Braves. And what's interesting about the Reds is that, they started off so hot, like 5.5 runs a game in April. And I pointed out on several shows, they were barely batting over 200. So something had to give. And we saw them come back down to earth. But we'll talk about that Rocky Reds game later. I do have a take on that total actually tonight. Also, if you want a sneak peek, it's on my page right now. It is my free play for Tuesday night at WagerTalk.com. But stay watching the show to get all these other games as well. The Braves here on the season, though, on the road are still averaging 4.8 runs, almost 5 runs a game. Still one of the better numbers in baseball. They're still hitting 251 in all games this year. Acuna, of course, is now out. That does not help the offense, but they had a losing record when he was out a couple years ago, and they went on to win the World Series after that. So I still am waiting for that buy sign for the Braves. But as I always say, we don't want to try to catch the falling knife. Dan Alexander loves a good bottoming process better than anybody I know. And we need to see that, of course, before we jump in, see that bottoming process. The Braves, by the way, went under 19 out of 21 games last month during that poor month of scoring. And one of them was a push. They only went over once in a 21-game span. Kind of 500 over-unders over the last couple of weeks. But now they're starting to cool off again, like you said, Dan, and they've gone under 3 out of 4, 5 out of 7. So I do not disagree with the under. Red Sox offense has heated up here in the last few games, 3 straight overs, and they've actually gone 5-1-1 to the over the last 7. So a little bit of a contrast there. I do think Atlanta's probably the play as far as the side in this game. And I do think if you play the Braves here over the next couple months, you will win some money. But I'd like to see them maybe string a couple wins together. They've alternated wins and losses recently.
That's Steve Merril. WT.buzz/SM is where you can find him. If you want to get some breakdowns from EP, WT.buzz/TGS. That's the gold sheet. That's right. You can also get free breakdowns as well, and EP will tell you about that later. Gentlemen, I'm always down to talk some Brewers Phillies, and our man Tyler pointed out earlier. He was just kind of asking what we think, and this is a good question for you to start it off, EP. How deep do you think Koenig is going to be going in this game? Because Tyler kind of brings up, you think they might be hiding Rhea behind him, or you think you might see some more substantial. He goes 5 or more. I guess it kind of depends what the Phils do at the plate, but I had a player prop that stood out to me in this one, so I'll talk about that, but I want to get your thoughts as far as the Phils and the Brewers are concerned here. Anything that stood out to you on this one, and any thoughts on how deep Koenig might be going?
Yeah, so Koenig is really straight up just a opener. Like, he pitched yesterday. Yeah. He threw an inning in the start. Like, he went 1 inning, and then now he's pitching the first inning of this game today. Now, this is a very unique situation. Of course, we've dealt with openers, but I can't remember a time where we've seen an opener go back-to-back games and essentially this be like a strategy from the Brewers and their new manager. But it's an interesting one. So yesterday I thought was a spot where it was simply just like books are begging you to take the Brewers type of spot, because we look at what Milwaukee's done this season, how this offense goes. Like, yes, they're going against the Phillies in the bank against Zach Wheeler, but like, are the Brewers really like plus 170 to the Phillies? Now, in the grand scheme of if they played, 100 games, do I think that they would win slightly under but closer to 50 of them? Like, probably, because this is a very good Brewers team. And now, again, this price, at plus 140 against Christopher Sanchez, is a guy I've talked about at the show. I am a big Christopher Sanchez fan. I know he's had some, rough outings here. Honestly, who hasn't in baseball? It happens to the best of us. I do like Sanchez. I don't like how he's performed against the current Brewers roster. They have seen him well, and this team is much improved against left-handed pitching, as we've seen so far this year, especially compared to last year, as this is, at this point, an entirely new club. Like, I am just really, I know how hot the Phillies are. I know how good the Phillies are. It's not like a diss to Phillies. I know Colin Rea is a bad pitcher, but again, every dog does have their day. Plus 140, I'm not sure that, all things considered, the Brewers are plus 140 to the Phillies in a situation. So I would lean toward the Milwaukee Brewers on the money line. And this one, though, it's not something I'm running to the window to bet.
Yeah, and Steve, it almost feels like the Phils, when you think about the injuries that constantly keep popping up for them, they keep winning in spite of themselves, or at least in spite of what conventional wisdom would say. We've talked about it, that maybe regression is coming for the Phils, maybe it is, but sustained, it just hasn't been there yet. And I think, we've talked about the better opponents that they're stepping up, and I think this price is a little bit mispriced, as EP points out there. But as you just looked at this game, was there anything that stood out to you, be it price, be it total? Because this one's kind of a question mark for me heading in here to game two. I was kind of surprised. It was a tight win, but I was surprised with the fashion with which they won last night against the Brewers. I don't know if they can repeat another kind of lower scoring duel like they did last night.
So I actually used the Phillies as my top free play last night. It was actually my only baseball play. I put it up for free for everyone yesterday on the run line. We did it responsibly, got the juice down. But the reason I kept off my best bet cards, we had undecided from Milwaukee for most of the day. And then today, now we have, like you said, a bullpen game. With that said, even though I liked the Phillies last night, minus the 1.5, I'd be hesitant going forward. They have been fantastic, 22-8 since the start of May. But I do think there's signs that they're cooling off. And yes, they've won 4 of their last 5, but let's go back a little further. They're still just 5-5 their last 10, just 4-4 their last 8. And then what I like to look at is offensive momentum. This is a team that overall this season, up until about a week or two ago, before they went 5-5, was averaging about 9 hits a game. The Phillies have had 7 hits or less now in 7 of their last 8 games. They've gone 4-4, but they've had 7 hits or less in 7 of those 8 games. So the offense is not there. They're winning with the pitching. If you look at these last 6 games, as you know, Dan, they've given up 2 runs or less in 5 of the last 6. I mean, that's why they're winning. So Phillies under is definitely correlated because I don't think they're going to get there offensively. But this being a bullpen game for Milwaukee is not a bad thing. The bullpen overall for Milwaukee has very solid numbers, a 2.8 ERA on the road this year, a 1.16 whip. So no matter who they bring in next, after Koenig, this is going to be a solid pitching staff. But keep in mind also, pitchers normally get, fatigued in the 5th, 6th inning. They do get tired, but it's also because the lineup has seen them a second, even a third time. That's when they start giving up hits. When you're doing a bullpen game, you're maybe only seeing each pitcher once. So I don't see the Phillies offense getting healthy tonight. Phillies team total under is probably another way you could attack it. But I'd be careful with your Philadelphia Phillies. I know they're due for regression, but I think if you look deeper, there's already signs that it's happening.
Yeah, and again, the ultimate cure-all, the ultimate lipstick on the pig, whatever you want to call it, is getting those wins, and maybe that's what's overshadowing some of these numbers that Steve points out. But I think they're worthy numbers, and part of how the Phils just keep winning is it's doesn't matter who they end up putting into the lineup. It seems like somehow, some way, they find a way to produce, and that's the little sprinkle that I'm going to be doing. I'm eyeing. Yeah, okay, maybe I'm prisoner of the moment, but David Dahl comes in, gets called up, and instantly he's making an impact. So does that mean that he's going to stay hot here against question mark pitching who, I'm not sure who's going to be going deep. I'm not sure who's going to be going. So he was 2 for 3, had a solo shot, 2 runs yesterday. So I'll take a little shot. David Dahl, why not? The guy's trying to play for his career right now, make a wave here. I'll go over his total bases. I love these, Steve. It's plus 135. So let's root for the kid. Let's go. David Dahl, even though, he was drafted by the Rockies and has been in some systems. So, but David Dahl, we're going over the 1.5 total bases. That's the play for me in the Phils game. No homer special for you in that one. Just rooting for a guy. That's the way that I'm going to be eyeing it. Gentlemen, a game that I teased here at the top, and while you're hanging out with us, you can hop below in the comments. Let us know which games you'd like to hear about, and we'll roll through them here. Guys do have best bets coming your way. We're going to talk Reds and Rockies and Toronto and Baltimore coming up in best bets. But a game that was loaded is the $2 play for our man Brian Leonard that got cut down because Trevor Williams, hip flexor issue. He's out in the Nats game, and he'll be replaced with a different, younger pitcher here for the Nationals. It's going to be David Hers heading to the mound, and it's really 2 pitchers. Yes, you've seen a little bit of Peterson, but nothing in a long stretch for him. So Mets-Nationals is one big question mark for me after the pitching change. What say you, Steve?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Trevor Williams is having a career season at age 32, and I think it's very suspect. I don't want to say Blanco, but, he's a guy I look to regress at some point, and maybe he's clearing his system before the next sticky or drug test or something here. No, but it is an injury. But he's a guy I'd be very careful with coming back, especially off injury now. And I was looking up some other things on him today. He's pitched over 56 innings with a 2.2 ERA. But he's achieved his respite like with a 21% strikeout rate. It's like he's not a power pitcher. I don't think he's really changed anything. I think Trevor Williams is an example of just random variance. So, keep an eye on him, especially if he comes back. This could be what kind of disrupts what has been a career year so far. So maybe in a week or two we could start fading Trevor Williams with more success. I've tried to fade him a few times this year, and he's been tricky. With that said, DJ Hurst is not a superstar. If you look at his minors numbers, I'd love to dig these up. A guy's making his debut. First of all, I do like the back pitchers making their maiden debut because the other team hasn't faced them. Talked about the bullpen game for the Brewers. It's the same thing. So I'm staying off this game because normally I'd like to play the dog here with a new pitcher. I'm just not sure Hurst is the guy I want to get behind. Minor league, a 3.7 ERA. That's over 83 starts over the last 5 years or so. Opponents do have a 178 average, which I thought was very interesting. And he does have 455 strikeouts in 317 innings. So some strikeout props might be worth a look. He does hold opponents' hits downs, but he gives up some home runs and he gives up some earned runs. So just some different ways to maybe approach him from a pitcher prop perspective, but a game I'll be staying off otherwise.
And I'm wondering for you, EP, whenever this happens, you start out, the night before handicapping the whole slate, seeing games, and then you find a spot that you love with Trevor Williams, a potential, bet on or bet against, however you see it. Then the pitching change happens. This guy's got to get his ass down there from Rochester. How does these pitching changes, does it make you just cross the game off the board? Because I got some folks here in the chat, like City by the Bay, saying this game's an easy pass for me. Once the pitcher changes, major question mark. How do I know what I got in this guy? Or do you find a potential buy on? Is it a live bet situation? What do you think before we roll on here? We'll talk Tigers Rangers next.
Yeah, so I think Steve made a lot of great points about things to consider, because there is definitely an advantage for the pitcher when it's their pumped up. It's also a spot start. So there's not like the Mets have a ton of film or anything on their iPads in their hitters meetings to understand what this guy does. But DJ Hurst, it's hard to really get excited about a guy with a 4.71 FIP and a 4.68 xFIP in 9 starts so far in AAA this season. And the Mets lineup, in the last 14 games against left-handed pitching, 157 plate appearances, 11 doubles, a 312 batting average, 246 isolated power. They're putting the ball in the air and hitting line drives, 375 expected weighted on base, and a 397 weighted on base. So they're seeing left-handed pitching really, really well. But going back to more your question, Newbie, on what to do in a situation, I would probably just cross this off on a game where there are 14 other team matchups going, where you don't have to live and die by the Mets Nationals. But at the same time, if you have a team like the New York Mets, who, like I just outlined, are really performing well against left-handed bats, and this line is relatively fair, you can make the case that the Mets are minus 135 better than the Nationals, regardless. So it is something I wouldn't just automatically run away from. I could see in some situations just being screw it. There are so many other games. But in certain situations, no, we know the Nationals bullpen has been solid this year, but we know they also, had a lot of pitchers go last night in that, that high scoring affair that we had yesterday in DC. We know these two teams and how important these divisional games are, even though it's only June 4th. These games are so important for a team like the Nationals. So we're only 2 games out of a wild card, believe it or not, on June 3rd, and a Mets team that's obviously looking to right the ship. So you could have some options live. I think that the books might be a little more, I don't want to say scared, but they're probably going to not release as many live player props for the Mets side, because they don't know what they're getting from Hurst. But his numbers are not really very attractive to maybe be oh, it's the time to bet on the dog. So I would say pass, but I do think that the Mets are, the way they've been hitting left-handed pitching, and we saw it with Mackenzie Gore, great starter last night, that, the Mets at minus 135 is probably a little short.
We got Mo Harris chiming in the YouTube Shorts feed. He said, if you're betting this Nats game, just call the 1-800 number. Well, I'll tell you, Mo, I bet lacrosse every weekend, so I already have that one on speed dial. But, hey, tickets cashing. That's all that matters. The one thing for me, though, guys, and then we'll turn it on over to this Rangers game against the Tigers. Tyler wants to hear about that one. City by the Bay. We got San Diego coming up as well. Mets were lucky to get the win last night. So yes, while Hurst is the big unknown, what do we know that we're getting out of him? Maybe this is a live bet for me. The one thing that I do know is money that would be coming in on the Mets doesn't make sense to me, because it's an unknown. Yes, okay, let's fade the guy it would be a wait to bet this live or pass for me. I wouldn't be betting Mets pre-flop because they got damn lucky getting our man Brian Leonard a winner, or else we would all be burying him in the chat if that ninth inning they get one more run across. We're talking about a different story here for the Mets heading on in to Game 2. So I would just be cautious for anyone who's trying to jump in on the Mets just now. I would wait and see maybe what we get out of Hers in the first inning, see how he looks. And then maybe try and hop in live if you can. Detroit, Texas. Tyler points out, we think Dunning should be a favorite against Flaherty. I mean, that's the big question, and that's what the market says, and that's what money has shown as well. Steve, Detroit, Texas. Anything stand out to you in this one?
Yeah, real quick on the Mets, by the way. If you look back over the last 13 games, Dan, they're 4-9. All 4 wins have been by 1 run. So that means the Mets have not won by more than 1 run for over 2 weeks. So, I guess you could take a flyer maybe with the Nats plus 1.5 run line. But once again, kind of like Eric said, a game I'd probably stay away from. But something to point out there. This is interesting also. I was looking over some numbers today. I always talk about expected win-loss records, and that's just based on run differential. And there are only 2 teams in baseball right now that have a losing record but have a positive run differential, which means they should be above 500, right? It's the Rangers and the Diamondbacks, last year's 2 World Series teams, which have underperformed this year. And they both have a below 500 record, but they're both positive runs. There's like 3 or 4 other teams that are exactly 500 with a positive run differential. And one of them is actually the Detroit Tigers. So 2 teams here you could say should both be winning teams, and neither one is. And it's just maybe a sign that they're both play-on teams here in the near future. Of course, that doesn't necessarily help us tonight when they're going head-to-head. But as far as current offensive momentum, something I'd like to look at, the Tigers have not been hitting the ball great. Single-digit hits 5 of their last 6 games. It does look like Texas is heating up, though. They had those 13 runs, 23 hits in the final 2 games against Miami on the road. Came back home yesterday, and a very mediocre 2-1 loss. I do think some of that had to do with travel coming back home. It was a weird road trip. They had Arizona for 2, and then they went for 3 at Miami. I look for a better effort from the Rangers. I'd probably lean that way tonight. But bigger picture, these are 2 teams that should be better than their records indicate.
Yeah, and Steve, to your point, not only was it a weird travel spot, it was also strange because a scheduled personal matter held out their manager. Right? It's not like it's really going to make that much of a difference in a maybe long-term missing out manager, a 1-game sample, maybe not so, but just a strange thing for them. And then 2, EP for the Rangers. In that 2-1 loss, it wasn't like they weren't hitting. 7, I think they left stranded. Going 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position yesterday is the number that I'm looking at here. So they were hitting, it just wasn't coming across. What say you, Detroit, Texas? Anything stand out to you in this one, EP?
Yeah, I would. I'd probably look just straight to the under. I know 7.5 is obviously a very low total. We saw the game go 2-1 yesterday, so I'm not like I'm out here, making like a crazy take. Obviously, they went against Tariq Skubal yesterday, left-handed pitcher, and something that I noted on the show last week, and if you honestly just paid attention to the Rangers this year, like they're getting absolutely destroyed by left-handed pitching, and teams even went to the point where they were adjusting their schedule to have left-handed pitchers go against them, their rotation, I should say. Now you get Flaherty, and Flaherty's a guy who I want to be let's fade him, but I look at his numbers and there's nothing that screams fade. Like a 94th percentile expected ERA, 82nd expected batting average, strikeout rate 97th percentile. He's not walking batters, he's getting whiffs. And this Rangers lineup is not a lineup that I know we mentioned that they are improving a little bit, but you're beating up again on a poor Miami team. If they do not get to Flaherty early, we look at the Tigers bullpen was let them down numerous times throughout the season. And the Rangers bullpen, as we see right there, is taxed, but they have been one of the better bullpens so far this season. Now, Dane Dunning is a guy who can get hit around, but at the same time, this Tigers offense is not a buy-on offense. They're a team that either explodes or they put up 1 or 2 runs. They're not really a team that's going to consistently 4-run, 5-run you to death. They're scoring 2 or they're scoring 10, and I think that we have a better chance of them going closer to 2. And Jack Flaherty, like I said, his numbers have just been electric, and he's not a guy who I'm dying to fade, so I expect another low-scoring game in Arlington tonight.
That's Eric Pauly, and if it's free, it's for me. WT.buzz/GSL gets you the Gold Sheet Light free guide. All you got to do is sign up. You can find more about that at that hyperlink, WT.buzz/GSL. Who doesn't like some free previews, getting you ready to bet some baseball. It's what we do here every day on First Pitch. So while you're hanging out, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't already, subscribe. If you're watching us on Instagram, on X, make sure you hit that follow button as well. And tell folks if you enjoy the show. We would greatly appreciate it. Something we didn't greatly appreciate yesterday, guys, was those damn San Diego Padres. Folks want to hear about this game. I'm looking on the side of a milk carton for our man Lunchbox RJ. He gave out a 4-teamer on the show that was almost 9-1 odds. Mets slap, Reds slap, Houston slap. The one that cost him was the Padres against the Angels, just like everybody saw coming, right? Again, this price, I don't personally believe, EP, in trap prices, but some folks thinking this one feels a little bit trappy, feels a little bit fishy. Sandoval for the Angels. It's going to be Mazur in the bounce back spot here for the Padres. The Padres can't lose 2 straight to the lowly Angels, who suck at home, right, EP? This one just feels fishy to me.
Yeah, so it's not something, again, like it's a situation where you got this guy, Adam Mazur, going, who is not somebody who, his minor league stats are going to be like, oh, maybe this kid's a stud. Only 19 innings in AAA so far this year, 32 in AA, dominated the AA level with a 2.5 and a 3.22 xFIP. But in his 4 starts in AAA, 5.49 FIP, 4.81 xFIP. Now, I know the Angels are very, they resemble a AAA team with their lineup. They're not as formidable of an MLB team, but I think that the Luis Ariz injury, like, we can't forget the 2 differences. Like, you want to talk about the Padres and their little bit of a run coming up into the last series, but they had Luis Ariz in their lineup, and it changes the entire game for you so much when you have a guy who is legitimately a lock. Not a word we love to use in sports betting, but he is a lock to get on base at least 1 time per game. That puts so much pressure on the opposing team. And now that they're without Luis Ariz and that ability to literally like have a situation where you have a guy at bat who's probably going to get on, it changes the whole dynamic. And this Padres team's offense was what struggled throughout the beginning of the season until the Ariz trade. Then you get a guy who comes in, that's 380. Like, yeah, your offense is going to look better. Now they're back without him again. I know that the Tyler Anderson is obviously a guy that you probably do want to look to fade. The Padres against left-handed pitching, just relatively solid numbers. They do a good job making contact. They're one of the lowest strikeout rate teams, so I wouldn't look to Anderson to get a ton of whiffs here. So we'll see more balls in play, which we did see. The Padres had multiple opportunities to win that baseball game yesterday. They just could not get the big hit, and the Angels manufactured an 8th inning run with a double and a couple sacrifices. I don't know enough about this Mazur guy. I do agree with what Steve was saying earlier in the Nationals-Mets game, where you probably like to look to back the AAA guy because it's so unknown. That the Angels are sure have, like, again, minimal stats of their hitters being they're looking at, but I'm not convinced that this offense is just going to get right back into it for the Padres. So another underlook for me, Sandoval Mazur in this matchup.
Yeah, and that was exactly what I was thinking. Was Steve 8.5? 8.5? Where are 8.5 runs coming from in this one? Yes, the unknown, the pitcher. Now maybe the bats lead up, but it just hasn't happened at home for the Angels. It was one of our major talking points yesterday. Is that output that they have all season long, sure, but especially at home. Anything stand out to you, Padres, Angels?
Well, I'll tell you where the runs are going to come from, Dan. If it gets over, it's going to be from San Diego. So you could always simplify it
That's
and
fair.
just play the Padre team total
Pissed
over,
off
right?
San Diego,
Because,
yeah. Good point.
yeah, I mean, Sandoval's been very mediocre this year. He's got a 5.5 ERA, a 1.5 whip. Those are bad numbers. And I talked about this game yesterday on WagerTalk today, and I thought it was a good spot for San Diego, one of those road favorites in game one, as I've talked about. But for a team that's 7-21 at home going into yesterday, you do feel like the do theory is going to kick in at some point, because I believe even a couple weeks ago, every team had at least 10 home wins or more a couple weeks ago, and Anaheim still had 7. Now they've got 8. So they are going to continue to maybe get some wins, but this is a team that was a playoff contender up until really last year with Ohtani, with Trout. And these are the type of teams you got to be very careful with, because it can linger for a couple years. So Anaheim's a pure fade for me. And the one thing they had going for them yesterday, and Teddy Covers followed up with this, and the one thing you can make a case for them yesterday was who they had on the mound, and that was Anderson. And he's been very good this year. And look at what he did last night. He held and overall the Padres only scored 2 runs. They left 7 guys on. I'm sorry, 1 run, left 7 guys on. The Angels did nothing, though. They won the game 2-1. They had 2 base runners left on base. So let's do the math here. They scored twice and they left 2 on base. That means their perfect situation was 4 runs, which is below average for a team in baseball. Most teams, their perfect situation is 10, 12 runs with guys left on base. So, yeah, Anaheim's not going to get there. I'd play Padre team total over. But I do think this maiden starter, Missouri, could actually have a decent outing. He was a second-round pick from Iowa last year. He's experienced, obviously, being a college pitcher. And his overall minors numbers aren't bad, a 1.13 whip. My concern, though, is that it came mostly at AA and beyond and below. At 28 starts, 24 of them the last 2 years have been AA or weaker. His 4 AAA starts with the Chihuahuas, El Paso Chihuahuas, 280 batting average allowed, 1.3 whip, which is okay, but a terrible 7.11 ERA, no Slurpee included. I used to get the coins on the bottom of the Slurpee. You guys are too young to remember. Joe Ranieri will remember these, the little 3D coins that come on the bottom of the Slurpee cups with baseball players in the 80s, and he loves them. But yeah, that's my only concern here is Missouri. He did not look good in AAA, but I'm not sure the Angels can hit a major league pitcher. So I like the Padres here, and I like the Padre team total over as well.
That's Steve Merril. Check him out, WT.buzz/SM. Gentlemen, let's talk some best bets here, and you can hop below in the comments and let us know what your best bet is on the slate. We love chopping it up with you down there. But EP, tell folks what they can get over at thegoldsheet.com, what they can find with the Gold Sheet Light each and every day, getting some free previews. And also let us know which team total we should be playing when Baltimore and Toronto are facing off. Baltimore got 7 runs across yesterday. You think they might repeat that? How are you betting this one?
Yeah, so first things first, WT.buzz/GSL. Where do I get all of my statistics from for pitchers, hitters, splits, where I'm looking for total bases, other props, as well as other free plays that myself and the team come up with every single day for free, daily MLB stat sheet, WT.buzz/GSL, and all premium picks and plays, WT.buzz/TGS. But I'm back in the Baltimore Orioles team total over 4.5. I'm projecting 5.5 runs. The juice is only -106, so this is a positive EV spot. Now, the Toronto Blue Jays stadium is known, the Rogers Center is known to be a pitcher's park. We've got those deep balls. But the Baltimore Orioles absolutely love hitting there. And they are going against this Toronto Blue Jays, Trevor Richards, and the rest of their bullpen. It's going to be a bullpen game for the Blue Jays. And you take a look at the Blue Jays' advanced metrics from their bullpen. They're one of the worst teams in fielding independent pitching, expected fielding independent pitching, hits allowed, home runs allowed, ERA in general, if you want to just get to the basic stats. And if you see this graphic right here, they're already pretty depleted. And they have some guys who it's tough to see who is really going to go deep into this ball game. The Baltimore Orioles offense, they put up 70 runs last night. They got 2 home runs from, Austin Hayes, which you don't think you're going to see very often this first 2 of the season. But this is a team that, as we know, when they get hot, they rake. They average slightly over 5 runs per game when on the road. And again, it's a team that is just simply like the better baseball team. When Baltimore Orioles were just -105 yesterday, like that was a hammer. That was a lot. That was a great bet. And it's a situation now, obviously the money line has been priced into the fact that, you have the Orioles' best starter going, but I'm just targeting in on their ability to score runs against a depleted and not very good in the first place bullpen for the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, -106 juice is, in terms of my projection, shows some expected value. So going with the Baltimore Orioles team total over 4.5 on the road tonight.
City by the Bay saying, O's going to the World Series, baby. I'm not sure about that one, but we're at least hoping that they get over the 4.5 runs, says our man EP on today's card. Steve, you got a best bet as well. I think the Reds are still scoring runs against the Rockies after that absolute explosion they had last night. Coors Field, a welcome sight for that hitting lineup. What do we think about the total in this one? And Steve, as folks can rock with you through the end of June for just over $7 a day, what kind of stuff do you have locked and loaded for the clients, and how are we betting this Reds and Rockies game?
Yeah, it's a great time to get that rest of June for about $7 a day. That all sports special, the $199 special, gets you the rest of June. And yes, I have a strong steamroller blowout in baseball tonight, a game we did not talk about here on the show. Totally different games. You're going to get a nice best bet there. But I also have a 5% play in NBA Finals Game 1. I've won more units than anybody in the NBA this season. I've won more units than anybody in the history of WagerTalk.com and the NBA, sides and totals combined. And yet I have still not had a 5% play all season. That's how strong this game is. It's the best NBA play I've seen all year, all season long, and it's available right now. My clients got it early. You too can get it right now for $35. Or why not get it as part of the 1 month special, the rest of June special? You get that strong 5% play, a $35 value on its own. You get the next month basically for like $164. And you're getting all my baseball every day. I average maybe 1 to 3 plays a day. Let's say 2 on average. That's working out to about $3 a play. Baseball and the rest of the NBA Finals, including the strong 5%er with that summer June special. Get it right now. No promo code needed. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com. And while you're there, check out the daily free plays and go look at the beautiful analysis. But I'm going to give it to you audio style here. And that's over the total between the Reds and Rockies. You know, I misspoke earlier. I said the Diamondbacks and Rangers are the only 2 teams below 500 with a positive run differential. There's actually a third team, and that's the Reds. They're 27-33, but they're actually +3 differential, which means they should be 30-30. That's what confused me. They should be a 500 team. The other 2 should be a winning team. Point is, Cincinnati has some punch in this offense, and we saw it early in the season. They came back down to earth, but I think they're starting to heat up again. And if any indication last night, we saw the 13-run outburst, thin air and altitude. I'm always looking for a reason to play the overs. And because these 2 teams have very mediocre offensive numbers this season, this is only a 10.5. And we often see 11.5s and 12s in Coors Field. My pitcher projection ratings, you can see both starting pitchers' ratings on the website right now for free, SteveMerril, But I'll mention that my 2 pitchers project to have a 5.9 and a 6.3 ERA, so they're going to get hit tonight. And Montas has really struggled. Colorado's offense has hit .391. The current lineup has hit .391 against him during his career. So once again, 2 suspect pitchers, hitter-friendly ballpark with the altitude, and a Cincinnati offense that is heating up. Reds team total over. I bless that, but I also like the game over 10.5 as well as a free play tonight at 8:40 Eastern. And don't forget, my first NBA 5%er this season is available right now for NBA Finals Game 1. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.
And you can follow him on X at Steve Merril. Over the 10.5 Reds Rockies for EP. It was the Baltimore team total over 4.5. Nice -106 price on that one. Shop where you save yourself a little bit of juice. Over on the YouTube Shorts feed, we had Bacon checking in earlier. Terrific name. Would go great with Sean Alvarez, who's making a burger for lunch while listening in to the show here. Bacon was saying Boston Celtics will obviously win the championship this year. As a matter of fact, if you want Steve Merril's thoughts on that, keep your eyes peeled here on the Wager Talk TV YouTube channel. That's right. We got some previews coming your way that I think you're going to want to check out before betting the NBA Finals that are coming up right around the corner. And don't worry either, subscribers. We're going to have the NBA Tip-Off Show coming back your way, getting previews coming this Thursday. We'll do some look-aheads on Friday, so more reasons than ever click that little bell. And before we shut it down here for the day, make sure you hit that like button. We would appreciate it. Hop below in the comments. What is your best bet tonight? And we'll chop it up with you down there. That shuts us down for another Tuesday edition. We'll be back locked and loaded on Wednesday with another full slate of MLB, hopefully winners for you. Until then, best of luck. Make sure you don't go anywhere. You can click the video on your screen right now if you want to keep getting all the info you need to cash on all the sports you love. It's what we do here at Wager Talk TV, and we'll see you next time.